All right. Can you hear me? Gonna fade this music out. Welcome to Clif Chats. Really excited to have Dave Kobrenski here today. Dave is a visual artist, a musician, and a writer. And I learned about him recently from Jackie Dickey, who is a student of West African music, and she told me about Dave. And the more I learned, the more intrigued I became. Dave lives in New Hampshire, and he has written 3 books. This book just came out, or is just coming out, Finding the Source, and I've started it. It's an excellent book, regardless if you are a student of West African music, a musician or not. A great book. So anyway, looking forward to learning more about his path, and appreciate you all joining us. Clif Chats is every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Also every Tuesday, same time, 12:30 Eastern Time at the Sound and Rhythm Drumming School page. I teach a free drum lesson. I'm an educator and student of West African music, as well as other types of music, and do a lot of teaching online. So I'm going to bring Dave on now. Welcome.
Hey, Clif.
Hey, good to see you, and
Good to see you too.
And we talked briefly on the phone, or I guess, anyway, it was nice to connect then, and I'm glad we can do this some more. And I'll keep my eye on since we're doing this live, I'll keep my eye on on Facebook too, see if people have any questions or comments, and I'll try to get to those as well. You were saying it's a balmy 55 degrees where you are right now, with snow on the ground in Mount Washington, and
Yeah, we're watching the snow disappear day by day over here, and up here in North Conway in the Mount Washington Valley, we're all like ski freaks in the wintertime because it's the only way to stay sane and have fun when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. But at this point, I think we're all pretty excited to see it go, and we're ready for spring.
Yeah. So where you live is is it a city, or is it rural or suburban? What's it like where you live?
It's pretty rural. Yeah, I mean, small town. North Conway, where I live, just on the outside of North Conway, is probably the biggest town in the area. It's kind of a bit of a tourist draw because of the mountains and the shops and the sort of the ski culture that goes along with it. And it's a beautiful place to be. In the summertime, just the hiking and biking and mountain climb, all the activities. It's a big draw for people around here. But that said, I would still call it a pretty small town.
Uh-huh. That sounds nice.
Yeah.
And so Casa Flute Company, is that your company?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Casa Flute Company is a project I started 12 or 14 or so years ago. I'm losing track of time with my flute teacher Lanciné in
Mhm.
Guinea at the time, and it was originally a way to get his flutes out into the world and provide him with an income. And I became his flute making apprentice over the years, and so I also make fula flutes. Those are the fula flute is the traditional flute that you would find in throughout West Africa.
You said also, so you make other flutes as well, or?
No, I make I do make the custom fula flutes here in North Conway too.
Okay. So
So
it's so I started your book and started to learn about you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more.
cool.
It's really enjoyable. But I got to basically, I learned about your first experience starting to learn about West Africa with the anthropology professor at your school, and you were working with
Right.
that professor to do drawings because you were an art major.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I was an illustration and painting major in
Mhm.
school and musician as well. I always had a love for music, and I was sort of supporting myself, or at least getting my spending money at the time by performing in local cafes. But I had nothing to do with West African music at the time. It was sort of wasn't even really so much on my horizon until I started this internship with the anthropology department. They needed illustrators, and it sounded like a fun way to earn some credits and do some cool stuff. And little did I know that it was going to start this chain reaction process that would kind of like consume the next 20 years of my life immersed in West African culture and music.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
So
yeah,
what kind of music were you playing at that point, in the cafes and that sort of thing?
at the time I was doing singer songwriter stuff. I
Cover
was
your original music?
Yeah, I
What?
did original music. I did covers. I was like a classic troubadour guy going around and playing.
Guitar and singing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Uh,
playing Bob Dylan and Neil Young and all the stuff that we were all into at the time, and going to Grateful Dead shows and whatnot. And so that was the path that I thought I was going to pursue musically
uh-huh.
was writing songs and singing and playing guitar. And it's funny though, in hindsight, it was like I was good enough to do it live, but in hindsight, I don't think it was my strongest thing.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't until I was introduced to these other instruments that I found my real musical calling.
What do you
Um,
what do you think was your strongest thing?
well,
Or
I
what came
mean,
out?
what brought me to West Africa initially was the drums.
Mm.
My dad's a drummer. I come from a musical family. My mom's a musician. She's a very talented pianist. My dad's a drummer, and so I think I had some of that in me. And they were always. And my mom was in music school when I was growing up, so she was always bringing home instruments. It was
Mhm.
flute, it was saxophone, it was guitar. There was always there's a piano in the house all the time. So I had a little taste of everything. And when I sort of stumbled into West African music, particularly drumming at the time, it was just like, oh my God, I had to have more. And really was just found that the opening up my rhythmic sensibility that way was the doorway into, what I'm strongest at musically. And of course, I didn't stop there with the drums in West Africa. There was too many other beautiful instruments that were just. I'm like, you see me in a music store or something like that with instruments around, and I'm just like, I can't contain myself. I just have to like know every instrument. So going to West Africa and seeing the balafon and the kora and the kamale and ngoni and the flute and all these things, I was just like, I may never leave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some people may not realize all the melodic instruments, and drums can be melodic too.
For sure. Yeah.
So what is your first musical memory? Do you have? Can you recall an experience where you first really noticed music?
Yeah, I think so. The first instrument that actually called to me was the saxophone. I don't even know how old I was. I might have been 12 or so.
Like school band or something like that?
No, it was just like I don't know why the sound. I was always attracted to the sound. I mean, it was just maybe hearing some Coltrane or something like that. That as a young kid, that made me kind of go, "Oh, that's a cool instrument. That's hip." And so I played it briefly, and kind of led me into a love for instruments that you make with air, with the woodwinds and the brass. And I played a little bit of flute then, even though I didn't really take them all that far. It was just a taste to know that it was something that I liked. And certainly guitar was an instrument that was super accessible for a kid growing up in New England. All I had to do was go down the street to the store that we had. It was Daddy's Junkie Music. I remember. I don't think they still have them in the area anymore, but you could just walk in there and sign up for guitar lessons. And so that's what I did. And that became my thing for, all throughout high school and into college until other paths presented themselves.
So you had a teacher doing lessons regularly from around 12 till college.
Yeah. And for me, art and music have always been these two things that have fought for my time.
Well, I relate to that. I was an art major in college as well.
Oh, okay.
Who also played music.
Right.
And so anyway, I relate to that. But I was curious because I was always drawn towards, and maybe musically also, more pretty abstract music and visual images. And I'm just curious because you study illustration, and so I see a lot of realism in what you do. And I'm just curious about how you also what music the music you're drawn to. Some people would think that maybe West African music's really abstract.
Right.
But I mean, I think the more for myself, the more I've learned about it, the more I see all the structure and form in it. It's very, very organized.
Well, sure. I mean, and a lot of people would think that most jazz is abstract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's So anyway, so I'm just curious regarding visual art, music, and also writing. Like you said, they kind of all were vying for your attention. So how was it? Just a natural balancing act, or was it something you consciously said, I'm focusing on this? How did that work for you?
Yeah, when I was younger, it was never a conscious thing. Like when you're young, you just kind of follow where your heart says to go, and you just do the thing that's fun and available and whatever. And it wasn't such a conscious thing. I think when when I was very young, my parents saw that I had a knack for drawing, and I loved it, and so they signed me up for art lessons probably when I was 8 or something like that. And I kind of I probably begged them to. And that was pretty fortuitous because the man that I studied with from the time I was like 7 or 8 all the way to the time I was 18 when I was off to college, he became one of my greatest mentors for art. And he was this cantankerous old guy that lived in town. He was an old sailor. He played Major League Baseball at one point. He pitched for the Cardinals briefly, and but he was just this big long white beard. Smoked a pipe. I went into his art studio down in his basement, twice a week for 10 years, and he taught me everything I know about art. And so that was what was going on in my youth. But of course, there was music was always a call too, just because it was always around me. And I got really more serious about music in high school when was exposed to some jazz guitar teachers, and then
Uh-huh.
I was like, like jazz. All of a sudden, it was just like mind blown, and to be able to
Is it all of a sudden the
explore that.
more technique, more working on, theoretical, and
Yeah.
before that maybe it was just song based? Is that right?
For sure, for sure. Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, before that, it was absolutely song based. It was, in the folk tradition of stuff. It was,
Mm.
I was just, listened to, like I said, the Bob Dylans and that sort of thing. Hearing jazz and having a guitar teacher that actually taught me, gave me my entryway into jazz theory was like huge. It was, I suppose at the time, in the same way that West African music kind of like opened my mind to this whole other thing that you could do with sound.
Mhm.
And so I kept pursuing jazz in my spare time in college. All of my elective courses were music stuff, jazz theory, jazz improv, and um, and so it wasn't a conscious balancing act until sort of after school, when I realized, I was like, wow, when I'm fully immersed in music, I don't even walk into my arts. It was like a year would go by and I wouldn't pick up a
Uh-huh.
pencil or a brush or something, and I'd be like, well, that's a problem. And so I'd get back into art, and then I'd get my skills back and do some cool stuff, and then I'd be like, oh, I haven't picked up my guitar in like 6 months. And that was when I realized I kind of needed if I wanted to keep both skills going, I had to be a little bit more conscious about my schedule, about maintaining my skills. And now, all these years later, that's still something I have to do. I think to myself, like right now, obviously busy with book launch and some in events coming up, and some gigs finally after pandemic. Finally, hopefully, fingers crossed,
Yeah.
these all go good. But I'm excited to get back out onto the stage again. But I'm saying to myself, oh, I should really get back into the art studio too.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, it's nice. It's nice and I'm curious. Maybe we could talk more about how they feed each other. But
yeah,
if you take a little break from one, you're informed. When you get back, there's a freshness maybe that oh, I missed this. Whereas
yeah,
instead of for myself, there were years where I felt like I just need to focus on this,
yeah.
and it wasn't until I kind of like, okay, I don't have to focus on this. I can do other things and come back to it. So I don't know if you found like how do they feed each other? And also, like, do you see a connection between visual art and music and
Yeah,
writing?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a connection between the two. Just something about maybe how our brains work. That brush strokes on canvas, to me in my mind, are very similar to notes that come out of an instrument. The
Mhm.
way that you can use them and apply them, and I think that's why I've always been drawn to improv music, whether it's jazz or improvising, with West African music or whatever, because it feels like that process of making art to me. And but they have informed for me, those two disciplines, if you will, have supported each other in other ways, because when I make art, a lot of times as as an illustration guy, which is to say, I make figurative art. It's not necessarily like I make photorealistic art, but it is figurative. Um,
Mm.
I really wanted to make art about music, or at least about the culture around music. And so a lot of my art over the years, as anyone who's seen any of my books can attest to, is about music. So even when I'm making art, a lot of times I'm thinking about music, and certainly I'm never making art without listening to music. So
Mhm.
sometimes I get my best ideas for a music composition while I'm in the art studio,
Uh-huh.
and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny for me. For me, when I watch movies, I often get the most musical ideas. I don't know if you're that way as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
For me, it's like when I go to a concert, I love seeing live music, but it makes me crazy because all I want to do is play music.
uh-huh,
So I'm like, I got to leave after the first day. I got to go home and play music. So
uh-huh. You're inspired.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. So you in your book you had talked about. Oops. Can you see me? Can you?
yeah. I can see you.
Okay. There's a. There we go. Um, you had talked about that first illustration for the professor. And I won't, I've only started your book, but I don't want to, I want people to read it on their own.
Yeah.
But there were two women, I believe, a photo of two women that you started to illustrate, and you saw something in them, which was inspiring. And so, and I know in your book you talk about your path, but so just if you could let me, since I haven't gotten there, and everyone who's listening know, how did you, how did that lead? Because eventually I know the book project ended up not quite working out. And so how did the music grab you? The West African music, the djembe, and then how did you find Famoudou Konaté, a shared teacher that we both have?
Oh, right. Well, my time in college working with the anthropology department on this book about Ghana really sort of opened my my mind to like this other culture. And while I was illustrating, and by the way, the illustrations in college that I was doing for these things were like so not exciting. I was like drawing like fragments of ceramic pots and that sort of thing. But then as I got going, as I talk about in the book, I just on my own, it was because I was going through all of these photos that the anthropology guys had taken in Ghana of the village and of people doing their everyday activities and of playing music and of drumming and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, that's like a whole other world. And so I started just to do my own illustrations because, that was what I was doing. And that was when the anthropology professor that I was working with said, hey, well, you should do more than just draw ceramic pots. And so that was really the seed that was planted, and that took a long time for that seed to start growing, I suppose. But after college, sort of like trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do in the world, like we all do, whether I was going to do something with music, whether I was going to do something with art. What the heck do you do with these things, without feeling like you're selling out? And just sort of coincidentally, I saw an ad for a West African drumming class in Boston, because I was back home in New England at this point. And I was like, yeah, West Africa, it's something about West Africa that is just calling to me. So I started going to these classes, and that was just when it was just like, wow, what have I just stumbled into? This is just awesome.
Whose class was it?
This was, I don't know if you know the name Alan Tauber. He runs the Drum Connection.
I know Alan.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I worked with Alan over the years, and that led into.
So he was your first teacher for West African music?
He was my first introduction, and he introduced me to some of the West African cats that were living in Boston. So very quickly from there, it was, I just really wanted to study with guys from West Africa, and particularly because going to their dance classes, there was it was so many years ago now. It's probably still there. I can't remember if it was just called the Dance Space, or I'm not even sure. But it was a place in Boston where they held West African dance classes all the time, and had with some drumming classes too. And just sitting in on those, once I had a couple of, I had some chops. It was still very early in my journey here, but to be able to sit in and experience what that was like to play with a drum ensemble of guys who had been playing their whole lives for the dancing, it was just transformative. And from there, I just had to do more, and I started teaching classes of my own, both in Boston and then eventually up north in New Hampshire, where I was living. And that was really when I think I started to get good was teaching it, because it was an opportunity. Especially now, because I was trying to figure out how I was going to make a living anyway. It was like, I found a way to get paid to study West African music and teach other people and practice like all the time, which is really all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so again, I feel like serendipity, as it always does, plays a big part in our journeys, and it did with mine. So I was seeking out any opportunity I could to study with masters,
Yeah.
And that was, how I came across Famadu. Was he was doing a U.S. workshop tour, and I go into it in the book too, and I don't want to spoil the book for people, but obviously studying with a guy like Famadu, like the man is just a a wealth of not only knowledge and wisdom, but of inspiration, and just his whole way of teaching and his passion for it. And just, I was just like, yeah, I mean, there's only one Famadu, you know? And so I just had to do anything I could to keep studying with this guy. It just felt like, wow, what an opportunity. And it
So
seemed
he
like,
came to Boston. Was that your first experience with him?
yeah, this was actually probably in Portland, Maine, I
Uh-huh.
think. Because, you know, that was probably just as close to me as Boston at the time from where I am
Okay.
in New Hampshire. And
How
but
far was that from you?
I guess Portland is about like an hour and a half. Maybe it
Okay.
was about 2 hours from where I was living at the time. But I had already been to West Africa at this point when I met Famadu.
Uh-huh.
I had met a guy named Tete from Ghana, and I went to
Do you
Ghana
remember
for
his full name?
Ni Tete Tete.
Ni Tete Tete. Okay.
You'll read about him in the book too.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And he's just a great character. And I went to Ghana for a few months, and got immersed in the music of the Ga people. Even though we did play djembe, it was mostly panlogo
Yeah.
music.
So you met Ni Tete Tete in the Northeast, but then you traveled. Were you taking lessons with him, learning from him, and then traveled to Ghana? Or
No, it's a funny thing. I had never met him. We had only talked on the phone.
Uh-huh.
He was still in Nungwa, outside of Accra, like an hour outside of Accra, I think.
Okay.
And we had just through a mutual friend gotten talking on the phone about what he was doing there in Ghana with his cultural center that he was building. And we hit it off over the phone. And he was just one of these. I suppose I didn't need too much persuading, but he was persuasive. And
Uh-huh.
he was like, "You're coming,
Uh,
you're coming to Ghana." And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." So
what year was that?
that was 2001.
Okay. Nungwa. Is that where you spent most of your time?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Nungwa Teshi area is on the coast of no, on the coastal area of Ghana. And really amazing. I mean, obviously, for anybody who's traveled to Africa, that first experience of going there, I was just like, I think I had to like keep lifting my jaw back up, because I was just like, like, wow, it's so different. It's a whole other world. It was like a different planet in some ways, you know.
yeah.
I just wanted more.
Toyote. Did you learn some Ga?
I did. Oh my God, it's been so many years though. That was the one and only time I've been to Ghana. I thought that I was like, oh my God, Ghana, I love Ghana. It's gonna be my thing. And
Uh,
then when I met Famadu, and I went to Guinea with him, I was like, oh my God, Guinea. And so I kind of never looked back. I really hope one day to get back to Ghana, because it was a beautiful country. And yeah, Teotihuacan. Yeah, I do remember just.
I was there for about a month, and
Oh yeah.
I was mostly around Ga people. I was around, but not only Ga people. And yeah, I felt it very similarly.
Right.
It warmed my heart. I haven't been there since I was there in 2005.
Okay. Yeah.
And so,
Which
yeah.
area were you in?
Well, so I was in a suburb of Accra,
Yeah.
called Osu. I had a teacher named Niaja,
Okay.
and he lived right on the water in a little round hut, not a hut,
Yeah.
a round structure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but then I would travel a lot to Krokrobite, and there was a music school there, and
Sure.
made some friends there, and then traveled to the Dog Base Center, close to the border with
Oh,
Togo,
right. Yeah.
and did some Ewe drumming. Also went north to Tamale,
Nice.
and did a little bit of the playing the Luna, and doing some so just kind of a general
Yeah.
variety, really.
Sure. Yeah.
And I know you've traveled a lot, and your book is a lot about that, your travels in West Africa.
Yeah.
So I don't want to spoil too much of what you've written about, or people can read about it, and I hope they will, because like I said, it's a great book. Would you tell about, so here's the book. Would you tell about the what this symbol, this is a symbol that's used in Ghana. Would you talk about that symbol a little bit?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that is the hands of Atta Nyonmo, the hands of the grandmother and the grandfather, because for them, God, this deity, God has a masculine and a feminine side, and so it's the grandmother and the grandfather, and this is the image of the hands supporting you, because they have a saying that is um, nothing without God, or except God,
Yeah, I've heard that.
right? Yeah, so that's what that symbol is, and it's kind of like, for me, this I really was drawn to this connection that they had with the natural world, the divine. It was all part of the same thing. Whereas to me, in my Western upbringing, I feel like there's separations between things. You're either religious or you're not, or you're an environmentalist or you're not, or whatever. I just felt like it was all wrapped together. The earth was sacred. Their connection with it was sacred. Their ancestors were all around them. The spirits of their ancestors. And it was pretty. I thought it was pretty striking to me to live that way, in a way that wasn't necessarily what I would refer to as religious necessarily, but it was deeply spiritual. And so was always drawn to that symbol that just shows you sort of nestled in the hands of the creator.
And it kind of reminds me of and the way you describe it, like the yin and yang symbols too.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
It's funny in Ghana. I love some of the shop signs. Like,
me too.
Jesus is Lord, beauty salon.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, and I do talk about it in the book a lot too, this dichotomy, because you see the presence of Christianity everywhere, but it's a very, very different thing, because at least my experience over there at the time was that it was infused with traditional beliefs. And I even had somebody there explain to me one time that the reason why Christianity was so compelling for a lot of people there is because the pictures of the saints reminded them a lot of their ancestors. They just saw them they see them as ancestor spirits, which are divine to them. And so I'd go to people's houses, and I would see all of these photos on throughout their house of all of these different saints, and I was kind of like, that's odd for these guys to have these pictures of these Western pictures of your quintessential white saints, but they're like, no, they remind us a lot of our ancestor spirits, and so there was a lot that drew them to that. And one of my favorite moments in Ghana was seeing a Sunday mass in the village, that the building was just reverberating with drums. And I was like, I probably would have been more religious growing up if my experience had been like that.
Yeah. I remember walking by a church, and just hearing this music. Like that's not like any church I've ever walked by before.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you drink akpakteshi at all when you were there?
Was that the palm wine?
No, the like liquor.
I remember the palm wine. I remember. How can I forget? I still get a headache when I think about it.
I had that too. I had it as well. Not my favorite flavor.
Right. Yeah.
Guinea fowl. Did you eat guinea fowl?
Oh yeah.
Did you like it?
Like is a strong word. It was an experience. I feel like I had a lot of firsts in Ghana. Both culinary and otherwise, eating goat, guinea fowl, all kinds of, bony little fish that I've never experienced, but that's, I'm glad I did too. I'm glad I had those experiences, because I had to eat stranger things as I got deeper into my travels in West Africa, living there, and having to see put my spoon in the pot and see like a claw come out of it. Like,
Yeah. My favorite was groundnut soup.
Oh yeah, groundnut soup. I still to this day love groundnut soup.
Me too.
Yeah, we make a version of it here at the house that tries to replicate.
If you haven't had it, it's like a peanut butter based soup or peanut.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, in the village too, in Guinea, where they grew peanuts in the village and they ground it right there. So it was like the freshest groundnut soup. Yeah.
Well, so you started your first. It sounds like your first experience with African music was first in the United States, learning from you were learning djembe music, but then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
traveled to Ghana and started studying Ghanaian music. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and so then you had already taken a class with Famadu or no at that you had
No,
not.
not at this point. I
Yeah.
came back from Ghana and, you know, for 3 or 3.5 months and got right back into teaching my classes, and I was teaching 5 nights a week,
Mhm.
you know, like 3 hours a night,
And what were you teaching at this point because you had been studying all this Ghanaian music and
yeah.
Ga music? Yeah.
A little of each, a little of each. So I had, you know, from Ghana, Tete and I had organized a huge crate of drums to come back to the States. It was filled with djembes, panlogo drums, bells, everything. And so my classes at the time that I was teaching were I taught Ghanaian rhythms on the panlogo drums, and I taught Mande rhythms on the djembe and dunun. And really, my goal, besides teaching authentic music, was to teach as much of the culture, the respect for the culture as I could, and that was why it was important for me to travel to West Africa, and why I kept going back. And also why I started collaborating with other West African musicians to bring them in, because I was just like, if this is going to be authentic, then it shouldn't just be me teaching it. And that was where
Yeah.
some of my greatest connections and some of my greatest friendships to this day have come from, is those musical collaborations. But yeah, but I met Famadu after that first trip, and I was just like all in. I played drums all day long, all night long, and I was just like in that world. And
So you went to Ghana in 2001. You got
yeah,
back when was that first class with Famadu?
probably in the following year in '02.
Uh-huh.
And I went to Guinea with Famadu for my first time in '03. And you know, that was when, if I wasn't already serious about it, I got serious then.
Yeah, yeah. And
Studying with Famadu in Guinea, you know.
and you went to his home village, Sangbarala, that when you went?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that for me was like the thing. I mean, Conakry was amazing, and but much different experience certainly than the village. And even just, you know, I've always been, I love traveling and I love road trips, but holy smokes, a road trip from Conakry to Kurusa, that was like that was like life changing.
Uh-huh.
Um, just to be on the road and passing through the countryside and
Bumping
seeing,
bumping along.
bumping along, oh my god, on like these you know, metal benches with no padding in this little bus, and so but I loved being in
Was
the
it like a
village.
Magbana? What was it, like a little van or a bus?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I've forgotten now what they call them. I remember
Isn't it
in
Magbana?
yeah, Magbana, yeah, and they used to call them trotro
Oh, yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
Ghana. Yeah, the
Yeah,
trotros. That's the
that's
name
right.
that's always stuck with me. But
I
anyway,
remember a trotro in Ghana. I don't even remember where I was. I think I was up north. That a lot of people seem not to want to ride in it, and I think I realized once I was riding, I think in the
yeah,
passenger seat, when I realized the exhaust was going right inside. Like,
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's the cheapest way to travel, for
yeah,
sure, and that's why people do
and
it.
there's a goat in the back, and
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Um,
so so
yeah,
um, so when you said you were like fully if you weren't already fully in when you went with Famadu to Guinea and then to his
yeah.
village, you were. And so what were some things you started to notice about Famadu? I mean, obviously the fact that you went with him, you already, there was something about Famadu, as we were
Yeah,
saying. He's one and only Famadu
yeah.
Konaté. But for me, as much of his drumming is his kindness, what I
Oh,
noticed.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing that, you know, you can't meet Famadu and not like the guy.
Yeah.
He's so kind, he's so warm,
Humble.
humble. Yeah, exactly. For this guy to be a master and be as humble as he is, but I also really liked his approach to the drums. You know, I kind of always called it that he had a village sensibility, and was
Mhm.
determined to maintain that village sensibility, to
Absolutely.
not play the rhythms too fast,
Uh-huh.
to really
Or
give
too
them.
high, or the drums not too tuned up high, and
Right, exactly. I mean, I used to just love that he would play these low djembes with calf skin stretched on them, with these super thick skin, and still just coax like the best slaps you've ever heard out of them. And but his playing was so musical and so tasteful, and had so much style and elegance. And I just think that there was probably no other musician that I knew at the time who exemplified those things more than Famadu, of just the style and his subtleties and his phrasing and all this sort of thing, So that was it. I was like not just in the hands of a master drummer, but a master musician.
Yeah, so musical.
Yeah,
It's like one note, what one note can do, where it's
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. He just goes, and you go, oh.
Yeah,
just the placement and the sound.
Yeah. I think it's unfortunate that he's not. I mean, that he's not still, traveling and teaching like he was before. But but we're really fortunate, and you were really fortunate to go with travel with him. And it sounds like you kept going back. And so what you were doing this because of passion. I mean, you loved it. You love it. And that's why you do it. And it's kind of led you in some different directions. When did you said you were teaching 5 nights a week? When did you start to take some turns from the teaching aspect of what you were doing?
Yeah, well, I think that, for me, when I was teaching, one of the best things, the most enjoyable parts was when the students got it and we could actually play the music.
Yeah.
And
because that's the goal right there. And that's what feels the best.
That feels the best, right? And so that, in some ways, I was a selfish teacher, because I was like, there's nobody around here who plays this stuff. So if I can train a bunch of drummers to play this stuff, then we can play music. And so after a bunch of years, I started having these advanced classes with some people who were like really good, and they got really serious about it too. And at that point, I was just like, well, we should take this beyond just a class and turn it into an ensemble. And because that's really what I became passionate about, is like really playing this stuff at the highest level that we could, and presenting it to people. I mean, and I live in New Hampshire, which is I love this. This is my home, but it is not the most culturally rich place. And that was one of the things when I was growing up that always kind of bummed me out a little bit. Even though I probably couldn't articulate it as like a teenager growing up in New Hampshire, but I was just like longing for something more cultural, something more diverse. And so I was just like, well, if we can do this and present this to people here, it could lead to some other things. And certainly it did, because it led to this collaboration that lasted still to this day, even though the ensemble isn't together anymore. Collaboration with Sayon Camara, who was a longtime apprentice of Famadu's in Guinea, and a master drummer in his own right. And to be able to provide for him a backup group that was worthy, that could hold it down and just let Sayon do his thing was amazing. And that was like really where it really started to all come together. And that also where I started to move away from teaching and more towards performing.
And so was art and commerce something you were thinking about, or art, and obviously you have to make a living. And so what has that balancing act been like for you? And how's that evolved?
Right. Well, the balancing act of doing all of these things that I was passionate about and making a living was never easy, as any artist or musician can tell you. So, we got by on playing gigs, a couple times a week, or whatever we could, doing festivals, and still teaching here and there, doing workshops at schools. So that was, a part of my income for a while, and it felt good. I held down like, more odd jobs than you could shake a stick at, like I've done everything, anything that I had to. So
what was the oddest one?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've done, the oddest one. Okay. So here's a couple. I mean, certainly working in restaurants, but I cleaned restaurants. I did the late shift cleaning restaurants for a while. That was like the 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. shift. That was pretty horrible. It was pretty horrible, but it got me by for a summer. And I had a little stint, a very short stint, splitting eucalyptus in California with a splitter. I did that for just until somebody that I worked with unfortunately lost a digit. And I
Yeah,
said, "Yeah, this
that's
isn't
not,
for
that
me."
wouldn't be good for your playing the instruments.
No, no, but I've done a lot of odd jobs, and it was just to say that I was just like, whatever I have to do to support myself, until the things that I'm doing are supporting themselves. And
Yeah.
that's always been an off and on journey. And I kept my connections with the anthropology world, which led to museum work, which I've done over the years as a designer
Mhm.
and even a programmer. And so that was kind of my bread and butter that allowed me to really just be completely free and free my music for the time being from having to support me. I
Mhm.
could just do whatever weird thing got into my head and not worry so much if it was going to be financially viable.
And did you find doing that other work that you still had the energy? I mean, that you had the energy and headspace to still work on the passion?
Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, and in some ways, I was super lucky because I, for the last 15 years, I've never actually had to go into an office or a place of work. I've always been self-employed, could be able to
Mm.
construct my own time and hours. I've just always been a freelance guy, whether it's been with graphic design or illustration or any of these things. So that really enabled me to say, that was a big thing where I could like go for like 2 or 3 months back to West Africa every year. There was no job I had to quit necessarily. It was just like,
Mhm.
well, I'm freelance. I'm
Yeah.
taking 3 months off.
So you could make that work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So you were going back, was it yearly with Famadu to Guinea?
Yeah.
Uh,
For the most part. Yeah. There was,
uh,
every now and again, when there was a coup or something like that, where it wasn't safe
yeah.
to travel. And it certainly during the Ebola crisis, I stayed away for a little bit. And so yeah, I made it my goal to go every year,
Mhm.
and I found like a month wasn't enough, so I started staying for longer, and I met some other teachers over there too, which opened up a whole other doorways. Lanciné Condé, my flute teacher,
Mhm.
and so after a while, I would go back to when Famadu stopped teaching, I would go back and stay with Lanciné.
Uh-huh. And so you got into playing, learning what he played, his repertoire,
Yeah,
and became really close with him and
yeah,
started to apprentice building flutes. And you have your company, which was at first to bring over or to import his flutes, Casa Flute Company.
yeah,
And
yep.
and then you learned how to build them and started building them on your own. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So and Lansany encouraged me to make flutes. There's not a whole lot of people at all that make flutes, even in Guinea, and not even a whole lot of people that play the fula flute there
Mhm.
in the village anymore. It's like a lot of the kids think it's too hard to start learning. I mean, they pick up the drums because they hear it all the time, but the flute is a different thing. So
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot of players, and it's certainly not a whole lot of flute makers. And Lansany was keenly aware that the tradition, if somebody didn't do it, the tradition would go away. And so he encouraged me. That's why he taught me how to make the flutes, so that I could help him do it, but also just to kind of keep it going. And he even encouraged me to experiment with making flutes out of different materials that were more readily available here in the States and more viable, as long as the sound was traditional. And I'd bring back flutes that I had made here in the States, out of various things of tubing and pipe and all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
and he would play them, and he was like brutal sometimes. In my early days of flute making, he would just be like, not quite.
Got it.
And that was good, though. That was good, because I'd go home and I'd be like, okay, back to the workshop. I'm going to do this. And finally, I was able to bring flutes over there to him that I had made, that were up to par for his standards, and that he played himself. Sometimes it was a great treat to see him playing those flutes that I had made.
Uh-huh. So how when Famadu or Nansady Keita, when they teach, they would talk about the rhythms and talk about, where's the rhythm from. And for Famadu, as far as I know, every rhythm he taught was a Malinké rhythm,
Yeah,
um, or a creation.
yeah,
And whereas Nansady had traveled and he would teach rhythms from the Ivory Coast and
sure.
from Mali, and but he would still always talk about, where it came from, the history of it. And so I'm just curious, I always found it sometimes it was not sometimes very difficult to understand the story or understand what the significance of the,
Mhm.
yes, this is a casa is a farming rhythm, this is for cultivation, but there's way more to it than that.
Mhm.
And so anyway, I'm just curious how you interpreted the stories, I think Famadu, it seems to me, a lot of times would talk about the story of the song, a song that was
Sure.
sung with the rhythm, or one of the
Sure.
many songs. And I'm just curious how your understanding of that maybe changed, or, as through your trips and your studies, and also maybe studying with different teachers and also studying different instruments.
Sure. Well, that was one of the things that I always was sort of dying for, was this this deeper understanding of the stuff that was hard to convey just through words alone. Certainly, stories and songs are an important part of how that can be transmitted. And one of the big challenges, of course, was getting my language skills up to snuff, which over the years, I really worked hard on my French, and so that I could go deeper there. But I found that it's hard to really get a true understanding of another culture if you're not like in it. And even then, it's hard to really penetrate, for lack of a better word, to really understand that, because it's not your culture, and you have to spend, to really truly understand this stuff, you have to spend some time in it and see it and feel it, and it really goes into, and this is what I started thinking about over the years. Maybe one of the biggest things that came out of all this time in West Africa was this idea of worldview, and just how we see ourselves in relationship to our environment. And because that's where the music comes from. It comes from a particular worldview that if you're not sort of there in that worldview, some of the stuff can never completely make sense, but spending time with Famadu and Lanciné and the other teachers, and spending time in the village, you start to see and understand the significance of some of this stuff, how it factors into their lives, how their lives are even, built around the music and the festivals, and how, it is life. Their rhythms are a reflection of life, because it comes from life, their activities, their environment, all these kinds of things. That music could never have been born someplace else. That music is very much about that connection to their place, So that's a hard thing, and it's a hard thing you can't just, it's certainly there's books that say, give you a little paragraph about what this rhythm is about. And Mamadi's books did that. And it's great. People need to at least know that. And at least, if you're playing kasa, you're playing a rhythm that's used for farming, but what does that actually really mean? What is the significance? What about all those other rhythms in the kasa family, and what those are played for? So you could spend a lifetime and never exhaust your research of doing this. And in some ways that's part of my passion and obsession over the years, and why I started writing books about to tell their stories, to give people a little bit more of a lens into it, even though it can never be a complete lens, but at least it can be something that is eye-opening, or you can just expand our own horizons, to give people a taste of the stories and of the people, from where the culture comes from.
Well, what I like about your book is it's everything is filtered through our experiences. So I like how you're coming at it from this is my path, and this is my experience, but there's a lot of for me, I notice it's enlightening in a lot of ways, that helps me maybe understand the culture a little differently through your experience, seeing what you experienced, and seeing so anyway, so I just I really appreciate that. This is a totally different subject, but there's a rhythm that I love that Famadu taught, and I'm wondering, you probably did it with him, and I've heard it called different names, and I'm just curious if you what you know this as, if you have learned it with him. It's like the song was like bing 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 dot dot bing bing dot
yeah, that's a D-bone rhythm.
Okay, see, I've heard it called
Kankarota?
Casa, something else, but yeah, D-bone is a Casa family rhythm, right?
It's a Casa family rhythm. I believe that's D-bone Kankarota.
Okay, because he was just calling it the song when I learned it from him, which I'm totally blanking on right now. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I love that.
I love that rhythm. I love the way the time change. It seems to change, where everything goes to the upbeat, and then there's actually one measure in that gets cut short. You ever notice that?
The way I learned it wasn't like that. The do about gagoon gagoon.
Yeah.
Gagoon gagoon.
Right, right, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, the version that Famadu taught us, he was like cruel to us one day when he decided like one week that he was going to teach us every kasa and every D bone rhythm
That's not
that
cool. That's awesome. That's
it was
amazing.
awesome. He
Yeah.
knew, and then he did this arrangement where he made us. I mean, it was just great. I'm glad he made us do it. Play every single one of them back to back. There was like 8 rhythms that
Did
we
he
had to
connect
learn.
them
All
too? Do you have
what's
to like
that?
connect them, or did you have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
connect them? Yeah.
yeah. He made these arrangements that connected
Uh,
them, and it was like the most mind twisting awesomeness ever.
and yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, that's one of my favorite moments with spending time with these masters, with Famadu and with Mamadi. I had this experience the most where Mamadi would be creating a rhythm right in front of you, and it
Yes,
was just
totally.
like, to see that process was
Yeah. Oh
amazing.
my
I
God.
feel like
Yeah.
I feel like that music that I learned from those two master musicians, Nansady Keita and Famoudou Konaté, is like that is the best lesson you could get ever about arrangement of music.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, because beyond just being master musicians and master drummers, their composing and arranging skills are top. So you look at some of Mamadi's arrangements; they're just mind-blowingly good. I mean, I've seen Western jazz and classical musicians take a crack at actually transcribing, in Western musical notation, some of Mamadi's arrangements, and it's just because they're blown away.
Uh,
And it shatters this in a good way, this myth that somehow African music is like whatever, like primitive music or something. It's just like it's anything but. I mean,
uh,
this stuff is just. I tell people it's as complex and as beautiful as any jazz. And
mhm.
certainly Mamadi and Famadu were both these master composers and arrangers, and I mean their CDs are a testament to that. Some of their beautiful, beautiful arrangements, the recordings that they've made.
Yeah, it would drive me crazy with like an arrangement of Famadou's if it did not resolve on the one. Sometimes I would be like,
Right, right.
you have to come in on the one. And there's even sometimes where I like on my own would change it, if I were sharing that with other people.
For sure.
Uh,
Yeah, that's one of the challenges for us Western musician guys. We're like, where's the one?
because Mamadi almost always it might do the most crazy things and go over the bar and all this, but it would come back to the downbeat.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. The Famadou, there were some times where it didn't. It always seemed to do that.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
And I look forward to reading your book and finishing. I've started it, as I said, and I would love to talk with you again after reading it.
Sure.
I wish you the best of luck and success for the launch. What is the official date that this is coming out?
April 21st. Yeah, it's
April.
available for pre-order now, and then it'll come out pretty much everywhere on April 21st. So that's pretty exciting for me.
And what are some things I saw? There's a video on that you put up, kind of talking about you and what are some things you're doing to promote the book?
Well, we've got a bunch of events coming up. We're calling them book launch events, but they're really concerts with a little twist.
Perfect.
Just you want it because all of my books, as a theme, there's music going through them. So figured a great opportunity to do some music. So I'll be collaborating with a kora player on one of them, and some of my other musician friends from the area where we've done projects over the years that are kind of a world music jazz combo. So we have a bunch of shows coming up, more added to the calendar all the time, and plus I'll just be going around. I love to talk and tell stories, so I'll be hitting bookstores and doing bookstore events and all that kind of stuff and meeting people. So kind of looking forward to if pandemic permitting, that we can do these things and I can meet some people for real in real life.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Powell's books in Portland, Oregon?
Yeah, actually, I think a book is on the way to them right now.
Okay. I lived in Portland for many years, and
Oh
that
yeah,
would be, if you're able to that'd be a great place to do, present your book.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, if you're ever in, looking to go to Nashville, it'd be great to meet in person, and I would be happy
absolutely.
to help in any way I can. And I know when we talked before, you had said you lived in Nashville for a year, moving with a band to live here and to make
Yeah.
it, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. No, we spent about not quite a year in Nashville and did the band thing and recorded an album, and had a fun experience rehearsing in the warehouse district and on 110 degrees in those warehouses, and it was a good experience. And yeah, the band kind of fizzled, but it was a great experience anyway. And
that warehouse district is probably a high-rise condo,
probably. Yeah, this was this was I don't know, 30 years ago.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I didn't, when I had driven past Nashville many times that long ago, and didn't even think to stop, and now here I am.
Right.
But it's changed a lot. Even I've only been here 6 years, and it's changed a ton. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. And these do stay up. They're archived, and I was having some technical issues. I'm still dealing with YouTube. Hey, are you familiar with Royal Hartigan, the drummer? And he's written a book about African rhythms and drum
Oh
sets.
yeah. I don't have the book, but it's I've got to check that out.
Okay. Well, he's joining me next week, next Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern time, 12:30 p.m. So I'm excited also to hear his perspective, because he spent a lot of time in Ghana. So it's kind of cool to talk to different people and hear, what are some similar experiences, what were some different experiences, and how did that affect you or them?
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, so I really appreciate you sharing your story, and really in this, I think definitely any student of West African music should read this, I think, but I think anybody should read it as well, because I think it's just a really good book, a really good story, well written, and there's just a lot of good information in there as well. So thank you for putting that out into the world, and I'm excited for you to launch that book and see where it goes.
Thanks, Cliff.
Yeah, I guess I should say.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. This has been great. Nice to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Also, if people can, I do these free drum lessons on Tuesdays at 12:30 Central Time on my Facebook page, Sound and Rhythm Drumming School, so people can check that out. And we're gonna end the broadcast, but if you will stay on for just a minute. And how do I do this? I don't know how to do it. There it is. Okay. Thank you, everybody.